So let's move further to configure our scene and our base tile. The next thing that I want to do, since we're going to be doing a lot of modeling, is that I'm not really interested in lighting. We're not going to be rendering this scene in Blender. We're going to be importing these models into Unity and they're going to be rendered there. So I can completely remove the light in my scene. In Blender, lights are called lamps. You can see the lamp is here. Now I can select that from the viewport, or I can select it in the outliner here. So I'm going to select the lamp and press the delete key on the keyboard and confirm that I want that object removed. We don't want any lighting at all. And when I'm modeling, I'm going to be modeling in the solid shading display. You can make sure that's activated in your viewport by moving down here to this globe icon and making sure that you've got the solid display activated. So I'm going to select solid display. That is already activated. Now, of course, this is right now a cube. This is going to be, however, an environment. So we're going to have walls on the inside here. Now, if I zoom into the cube, you can see that we've got the faces are shaded on both sides. But actually, the normals are facing outwards here. So really, it's only going to be shaded on the outside. When we take this cube into Unity, only the outside faces will be shaded, and we don't actually want that. We want the interior faces to be shaded instead. So I'm going to need to flip the normals on this object. So I'll enter edit mode. I will press the tab key on the keyboard and I will switch to face mode. I'm going to right click and choose face, or you can also select the face mode from down here. So I'm going to choose face mode. I want to select all the faces, so I'll press Ctrl A on the keyboard to select all of those faces. And to flip the normals, I can choose Mesh and Faces, and then move up to the menu here and choose Flip Normals, or alternatively, I can press the Ctrl key on the keyboard and right click with the mouse to display the context menu and choose Flip Normals from the context menu. Now I've flipped the normals, but you'll notice that nothing appears to have changed in the viewport, and that is because by default Blender renders all the faces as two-sided, and I want to disable that behavior. So I'm going to exit the object mode here and just open up this menu from the side, and I'm going to scroll down here and open up the display tab. So I'm going to unravel the display tab, scroll down further, and I want to put a check mark in back face culling so that the backs of faces are not rendered. And when I enable that, you can see now in the viewport this has changed. If I toggle it on and off, you can see the difference. I'm now viewing this cube as an observer from the outside, but I can see its interior faces because these faces have been flipped. So there we have now configured the cube to show the interior faces. The other thing that I like to do is that when I deselect this cube, really I can't see the edges marked on the cube. I like to be able to see the wireframe over the top of the shaded display. So I'm going to select the cube here and just move over here to the Object Data tab and scroll down. So at the bottom under the display group, we have these settings here, and I'm going to put a tick inside wire and draw all edges like so. So now you can see, even when I've not selected the cube, we're still having those edges drawn nice and neatly there, and I can see all of those edges. So that's how I've now configured the base cube ready for modeling. So let's start by creating perhaps the simplest of all the pieces in the modular environment set, and that is the floor piece, the center floor pieces. Now, if you have a look at this model that we've already got in our base tile, you can see that really we've already got the floor piece in place, which is this square floor here. It's just that we don't want the walls or the ceiling. Now, I don't want to come in and start editing this base tile and making changes to this. I actually want to preserve this object intact. I want to create duplicates of it and adjust the duplicates as I need to. So what I've got here is this base tile. You can see here on the layers panel is on this first layer here. We know that because of the little dots on the layer. If I select the other layers, you can see they're completely empty. And I'm going to return back to the original layer. So what I want to do is to duplicate this object, put the duplicate on a new layer, and then tweak the object as necessary to create the floor piece. So I'm going to select the base tile and press Ctrl D on the keyboard to create the duplicate. and then just press enter on the keyboard, and now we've got a duplicate that's in place. So I'm going to press Ctrl Z to just undo the transform there, and I want to move this duplicate to this second layer here. So to do that, I can choose Object, and I'm going to choose Move to Layer, and I can move it to the second layer here, and now it's been moved. You can see the dot has been added to the second layer down here, and I can jump between the two and see the different objects. So here we've got the original tile, and here we have our duplicate, and I'm going to come in and start editing this object to create the floor piece. So all I really want to do for creating this floor piece is to delete the walls and the ceiling. So to do that, I'm going to select the object, come into edit mode, and I can draw a box select around all of these faces like so. And you see that it only selects these two closest to me. And what I want to do, let's just undo that there, what I want to do is select all of these faces that I draw a box select over. But right now it's just drawing the faces nearest to me because I'm not selecting the faces furthest from me. And I can fix that easily by coming over here and turning on limit selection to visible. I can turn that off so that now I can draw a box select over all those faces, and it will also select the ones at the back. So it just hasn't selected that one there, and I can select that. And we have all of those faces. So now I can press delete on the keyboard, or I can scroll down here on this left-hand menu and choose delete, and I want to delete the faces here. So I'm going to select faces, and I've deleted the faces, and all we're left with now is this floor section. And that's really exactly how we want it. So now I've got the floor piece for our environment, and this piece will tile nicely. So there, we've created the floor. I'm going to jump back to the main tile, the base tile that we have, and we're going to be using this to start creating the other pieces such as the walls and corners. So what I want to do in this movie is to create one of these straight section edge pieces for our modular environment. Right now you can see we've got this kind of quad floor. We have this on the second layer, and we can tile and repeat this as many times as we want. But there will come a point where we want to have a wall section, and it's going to be a straight wall section. We're also going to have a corner piece that we've seen as well, but right now I just want to focus on creating the straight wall section piece that will be used to mark the edges of the floor. So let's return back to our base tile, and we're going to clone in another tile. So I'm going to make sure this base tile is selected. Again, it has that orange border drawn around it, and press Ctrl D on the keyboard to create a duplicate, and then I'm going to press enter on the keyboard to accept the position. This is the new position of the duplicate, and again it's exactly over the top of the original cube, and I'm going to move this to the third layer here. So I'm going to select Object, Move to Layer, and select the third layer. I'm then going to jump over to that third layer so we can see that we've got this piece here, and we can come in and start modeling the floor piece from this. Now the first thing I want to do is to delete the ceiling, because the modular environment we're creating is not really going to be for a first person type game. We're going to have something maybe like an isometric kind of game where the camera's zoomed out here, and in those sorts of games we don't need a ceiling piece at all. So I'm going to enter edit mode here by pressing tab on the keyboard and select the ceiling piece, and just press delete on the keyboard and select faces to delete the ceiling face. What I want to do then really is to start modeling the wall section. Now we know that we don't need this half of the cube at all. We're just modeling one half here, but not just that. I'm going to create the wall piece, but it's going to actually be based on a quad section. So I don't even need this half of the wall. I just need this quad section here. And when I want to create the other half of this floor piece, this wall piece, I'm just going to mirror this in. We'll see how that works. So let's get started at sort of chopping apart this tile. So I want to put a dividing line through the center this way and through the center that way, and to do that I'm going to insert some edge loops. So I'm going to press the tab key to bring this object into edit mode. And again, I'm going to move over to this panel here, and you'll see that we have this tool, Loop, Cut and Slide, and it allows us to insert edge loops into the model. So I'm going to choose loop cut and bring the edge loop here and click, and then press enter on the keyboard. If I don't press enter on the keyboard, I end up sliding the edge loop to all kinds of other places. If that happens, that's okay. You can just click to position the edge loop, and if you want to bring that back to the center, you can just move here where it says factor, and I can just change that to 0 to reposition that back to the center of the cube. So we've inserted one edge loop here, and I want to insert another one across here. So I'm going to insert another edge loop here, press enter on the keyboard to insert that there. So now I've created this piece here, and I can start removing the pieces that we don't need. So I'm going to right click and choose face mode and select all of these faces here and press delete on the keyboard to remove them. And again, I'm going to come over to here and delete all of these faces as well and press delete for those faces. And I'm going to press this delete on this face too, because what we're creating is a straight wall section that's going to tile all the way through here, so we don't want a wall piece there. So I've got the basic structure in place for our wall section, but of course just having these two faces like this is a bit bland. We're going to want to come in and start refining this model and adding extra detail, and we're going to be doing that next. So now we've got the main wall here, the straight section sort of blocked out. We have the floor region and the wall region. You'll notice already that the model here, the pivot point, is still aligned to the world origin, and that's really going to help us out later on when modeling, when flipping this model and rotating it. If I just press E on the keyboard to move to the rotate tool and rotate this model, you'll see that it hinges around that pivot point. So I'm going to press Ctrl Z to undo that here. You'll also see that the dimensions of this wall are still aligned nicely to the grid. So let's come in and start adding detail to this wall. Now the first thing I want to do is, since this is going to be a sci-fi environment, I'm going to have this wall maybe a little bit angular here so that it has a kind of hexagon look. So what I want to do is I'm going to select the edge mode here and select this bottom edge and press W on the keyboard to move to the translate tool, and I'm just going to pull in that bottom edge to maybe about there, so we've got a kind of slope on this wall here. Now what I want to do with this slope area is I want to maybe have this sloping until about the middle of the wall, and then after that it's going to become a straight section for the rest of the wall. So I'm going to choose the loop cut and slide tool and move this here and just select the loop cut and slide, click on the wall, and I'm going to slide this down maybe to about there and insert that edge loop, so we've got that edge loop fitted there. And so this part of the wall here, this is going to be the straight section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with loop cut and slide again, and I'm going to insert a second edge loop and bring it down maybe to about there like this, and I'm just going to pull this edge loop inwards like so, and I want to line it up exactly with the position of this edge at the top. So what I can do is I can turn on snapping, switch to say vertex mode, then I'm going to constrain the movement of this edge on this axis here, the X axis. And as I hold it down and start to move it, I'm going to move my mouse cursor over this vertex here, and it will snap the position of this edge to the X position of this vertex. So now I know that this edge is exactly aligned with this edge, and it's a completely straight section of wall. I'm going to turn off snapping there and select edge again. I'm going to select this edge and perhaps just move it just inwards just a little bit and raise it upwards like so. Again, I could use snapping to align this edge with this edge, but I want perhaps a slight angle on this wall here like so, maybe something along those kind of lines. So now we've got the angular bottom half here and this top part. Now I also want perhaps along the bottom, aligned with the floor, some trim. So I can create that by inserting another edge loop at the bottom here. So let's bring this down maybe to about there to represent the top of the trim. And then I'm going to cut this down with another edge loop here and raise it up to about there, like so. And then I'm going to select this edge, the top edge here, and the bottom edge. Actually, I think I'm going to select maybe this edge and then just bring this back just a bit here and just pull this down like so to create a bit of trim for the bottom of the wall. I still want to keep an angle on this part of the wall, and I think that's looking okay. You can see now we've got some trim here at the bottom of the wall. That's looking pretty good. I also want some extra trim at the top of the wall here. So again, I'm going to enter edit mode, insert another edge loop and bring that to the top of the wall to about there. And I want this to poke outwards, so I'm going to move to face mode, select this face, and I'm going to be extruding this outwards. I can use these different extrude tools here. I'm going to press Alt X on the keyboard, and that will extrude out the edge along its normal. So maybe to about there. I think that's looking pretty good, I think. Yeah, that's about right. And one thing you'll notice is that we've got a face here and here. Now we don't want these faces because when we tile this wall, it's going to meet up here and we're never going to see these faces at all. You might say, well, if we're never going to see them, it doesn't matter if you leave them there. But of course, when we put this into Unity, every single face of this model has a computational cost, and we want to reduce that cost as much as possible so we can get the best performance for our game. So we want to act as though every single face counts. So I'm going to select this face and I'm going to select this face at the end here. I'm going to press the delete key on the keyboard and choose faces to remove those faces, and there we've created the sort of the basic shape of our wall section. Next, I want to sort of look at the edge pieces here of the wall to see how we can make them tile nicely. So in this movie, what I want to do is to look at completing our wall straight section here, paying particular attention to the edges here. Now, what I want to do is, this is supposed to tile, and right now it does tile already. Let me just show you that. I'm going to press Ctrl D to duplicate this mesh and just activate the incremental snapping here and just move this off here, and you'll notice that it snaps nicely in increments, so this is now tiling seamlessly and it looks pretty good. It works fine. But if we tile this many times, it's probably going to look very samey. So what I want to do is I want to edit the edge of this model here, just this edge and not this edge, so that I can put in a pillar or a divider of some kind just to really divide up the space and add a bit of variation so that the tiling will look more interesting. So I'm going to select this mesh and delete it and press OK. And then select this mesh and enter edit mode by pressing Tab on the keyboard. And I'm going to insert a new edge loop here along the vertical length of the model. So insert an edge loop there, just slide it to the edge like so, and perhaps leave it a bit there maybe. I'm going to turn off incremental snapping and just slide this inwards a little bit. It's quite thin, this area here, but when we duplicate and tile this mesh, the other half will make up the right hand side of the width for this pillar here. So what I want to do is really have a straight kind of divider that moves from this edge upwards directly to this bottom edge here. So that means really these intervening faces here, we can delete them. So I'm going to right click and enter face mode, and I'm going to select the first face that we want to delete, and I'm going to move up here to face the last face, hold down shift on the keyboard to select that face like so, and then I'm going to move over here to the menu and choose select and shortest path, and that will select all the intervening edges here. And I'm going to press the delete key on the keyboard and choose faces to delete those faces. So now I've deleted those intervening faces and I want to connect this edge with this edge directly. So I'm going to right click and choose edge mode, select this edge here and select this bottom edge here like so, and then I'm going to choose mesh and edges, and I'm going to choose make edge face like so, and it will insert a new face between those two edges, and there we have the length of the divider that we're going to be using. But of course I want to come in and fill this gap here, So I'm going to right click, make sure we're in edge mode, and I'm going to select all of the edges around the perimeter of this gap, like so, and select that edge. And then I'm going to choose Mesh, Faces, and choose Fill, like so, and you'll see that it automatically fills it, plus it triangulates the model here, triangulates this new face. We don't actually want this extra edge here, so I'm going to select this edge and scroll down here to delete and choose Dissolve Edges, which will remove that face, that edge, but keep the face intact. The one thing that sometimes can happen in Blender is that you can end up with double vertices, two vertices in the same place. So what I'm going to do is move to vertex mode, press Ctrl A to select all the vertices in the model. I'm going to press the Control key on the keyboard and right click to display the context menu, and I'm going to choose Remove Doubles from the menu, which will delete any double vertices, and that's all there is to that. So now I've inserted this part of the divider and the fill that we have here as well. And the last thing that I want to do is to come over here and add an extrusion to this face. So I'm going to move to face mode, select this face, press Alt X on the keyboard, and just extrude that out just a little way there. And again, we get this interior face that I'm going to select and delete that face because we don't need it. And there we've created a divider for our mesh. And so, for example, what I can do now is let's just press Ctrl D to duplicate this, like so. And I'm going to move the duplicate to a new layer, this layer for example. So I'm going to choose Object, Move to Layer, and we're going to be moving it to this layer. So I'm going to move to that layer there. And I'm going to add a modifier, a mirror modifier, to create the other half of the straight section. So I'm going to move over here to the Modifiers tab, click on the drop down, and then choose Mirror from the list. So here is the mirror modifier, like so. And by default it mirrors it on the x-axis, but I don't want that. I want it to mirror it on the y-axis, like so. And you can see now that we've got a duplicate on this side. So I'm just going to accept those changes and choose Apply, like so. And now we've got the full length of our straight through section, and we've got the pillars or the dividers on each side. So again, I could move back to our incremental snapping, create a duplicate of this, like so, and pull the duplicate out to the edge, and there we have the two straight sections, and those dividers break up the space nicely. So in doing that, we've created a complete straight section just by duplicating one half and mirroring it to the other side.